Earlier tonight, President Biden delivered the annual State of the Union address. There was a lot of pressure on Biden tonight. His campaign staff was watching his speech the way you watch a toddler learning to walk. It's like, go, go. He's doing it. Good, he's good. Oh, no, he fell. He's not crying. He's okay.
Yes, he's been infantilized. Even his pals in the propaganda apparatus have infantilized the President of the United States in a time of global conflagration and madness at home. Not a problem, probably. I saw in the Washington Post that this is not going to be an issue. The Washington Post today, they've got a picture of Biden standing upright. He's not in his oxygen tent here. He's at the podium. You got Kamala back there, and the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, who shook his head many times last night, again and again, while Joe Biden was making all sorts of absurd claims and accusations and false, fraudulent claims. 15 million jobs he created. He's been called on that dozens of times by left-wing radical fact-checkers who say, no, not 11 million, no, not 10 million, no, not 7 million. No, you haven't created, no, that's just the Wuhan Red Death out of the Wuhan Institute of Virology. People coming back to work. You didn't create those jobs. Those jobs already existed. But he'll take credit where credit is not due anytime. And so happy Friday. We had Super Tuesday, then very special Wednesday. Now we've got Special Ed Joe up there. He's an angry old thing. He's really Abe Simpson. You know, Abe Simpson on The Simpsons, Homer Simpson's father and Bart's grandfather. And boy, he was really something last night. The news media is spinning it naturally. The front page of the Washington Post with their near banner headline, "A fervent Biden takes on Trump, GOP." He's comparing the Republican Party, the party of patriotism and the American flag, to the Soviet Union. That's pretty amazing, which makes him more like the Soviet Union than ever before. They use the Russian playbook, as we know. Remarkable stuff. So there it is. It's a fervent Biden takes on Trump, GOP. It was the nastiest State of the Union speech delivered certainly in modern times. I was thinking maybe he borrowed a page from the Jefferson Davis playbook. Jefferson Davis never got to give a State of the Union address, of course, in the United States Capitol because he was the Democrat president of the Confederate States of America. But I was waiting for Joe Biden to announce that he'd ordered the South Carolina militia to take Fort Sumter again because it was a very belligerent speech. Belligerent means warlike. It was a very warlike speech, a very hostile speech, and by a nasty, mean-spirited, squinty-faced, plastic surgery, hair plugs, old man with a bad memory, and remarkable stuff. And the news media loved it because they are a donkey show. But never mind that. A fervent Biden takes on Trump, GOP. The next headline from the Washington Post, President confronts age concerns in feisty speech. You know, when someone's calling you feisty, that means you're really old. That's what that means. Oh, he's so feisty. Yeah. Oh, he's spry. I'm surprised the word spry isn't in the headline here. Pretty amazing. While stumbling at times, he casts his long experience as an asset. Yeah, sure. Then, I guess there are a lot of other people with long experience in that room last night. Maybe we should get them. And they could be president because, I'm all for appreciating experience. I definitely am. Decades of experience typically is a good thing. In his case, he's been wrong about everything for decades. So, and now he's more wrong than ever. But now he's demented and hostile and angry. He's the angry man. I had several text threads going simultaneously last night, as you might imagine, with lots of people, including our internal text thread with Michael Piercy and Randy and Kevin and back and forth on a lot of what was going on there, and multiple other text threads with all kinds of people. Lots of fun. Now, one of his big ideas, which is demented, is that he announced that he's going to build a port for terror because Hamas, he says, needs a port, and U.S. troops will go into Hamas territory in the Gaza. They have more than 25 miles of beautiful Mediterranean seafront property, of course, which they've turned into a killing field because they're savages. But never mind then. Joe Biden says, yeah, the U.S. troops are going to go in, and we're going to build a port for the terrorist organization known as Hamas, backed by Iran, which is, of course, backed by Joe Biden and Barack Obama and the left with the red-green coalition. They love death more than we love life. Yeah, but this insanity to build a port in Gaza in order to get aid in there. Now, what happens when the troglodytes come up and shoot everybody up and steal all the aid? Then the U.S. troops shoot them to stop them? Or do they just let the terrorist army of Hamas steal all of the so-called aid going into the so-called port? This is one of the dumbest ideas ever by a president of the United States. It's not often you see people this dumb in a position of authority anywhere. I mean, honestly, smarter people run tire stores all over America. Much smarter people have to be more serious. Emergency mission won't require American troops on the ground in Strip, administration says. Really? So they build a port without touching land? That'll be a good magic trick. I look forward to seeing that. We are an amazing country. See, a port is, the one end of it is on the ground, and then the other end is in the water. See how that works? It's a port. And then the ships come in, the aid ships, because, I was going back and forth with a couple of friends yesterday, old Pentagon friends. So I assume that soon he'll be announcing that we're going to build an airport for ISIS. Because if you're building a port for Hamas, why not an airport for ISIS? Maybe ISIS needs an airport because they got to kill people and terrorize. And Joe Biden and the left, they're here to help. The red-green coalition. You know, the commies, the red, the Islamists, the green, the red-green coalition like Munich 1972 with the Palestinians that butchered the Israeli team there. And they demanded the release of the leaders of the radical left-wing Red Brigade's outfit, the Baader Meinhof gang, when they killed the Israeli athletes there. The red-green coalition goes back a long way. And it's alive and well because the Democrat Party. Also, there were violent mobs of people that call themselves liberals outside of the Capitol last night. They're pro-Hamas, and they're demanding that Joe Biden help radical Islam kill the Jews. And Joe Biden said, good idea. That's exactly what I'm going to do. From the river to the sea is the Biden campaign's new slogan, because they got to wipe the Jews off the map, because they're a little concerned about the Islamist vote in Michigan and in Minnesota. Michigan is an important swing state, so you got to win the jihad vote. You got to win the kill the Jews vote. The Democrats do, and they're all in, because he doesn't have the courage to stand up and say, no, Israel is our ally and Hamas is not, to the Muslim voters in Michigan and Minnesota that are voting present or whatever they're voting, because they hate the Jews. That's the thing. They're making, Nazism fashionable again, these guys. Anti-Semitism has gone mainstream, and the Democrat Party is leading the charge. And there were mobs of them outside last night, and they started at the federal courthouse, the E. Barrett Prettyman federal courthouse, where we try many of our favorite government officials over the years. And they went to the National Gallery of Art, and they were projecting their propaganda on the side of the National Gallery of Art. And then they were chanting and screaming and going wild outside of the Capitol. Kill the Jews, kill the Jews. It's a little hard to understand because it's in German. Biden, you can't hide. We charge you with genocide. The motorcade had to change the route that it was going to take because the left was out there chanting, kill the Jews. It's remarkable. And support Hamas. And Joe Biden is supporting Hamas. He's going to build a port for Hamas, maybe an airport for ISIS. This is our, he likes to talk about infrastructure all the time. I still have yet to see an infrastructure project in the United States. Have you seen an infrastructure? Oh, look at the roads. Yeah, we never fixed the roads in the United States before Joe Biden came along. Where's the airport? Where's the seaport in the United States? We're building seaports for Hamas in Gaza, which is going to be a bloodbath because only a moron would come up with this idiotic idea and then say, you know what? that idiotic idea is perfect for us. Let's build a port for Hamas. That's what they're doing. Pretty amazing stuff. He was also attacking Republicans. I texted the words civil war repeatedly last night because he sounded like it was a rallying cry against, again, accusing Republicans of being like the Soviet Union. You guys have been sucking up to the Soviet Union. You were sucking up to the Soviet Union before Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush collapsed it. But never mind that. Putin's still angry about that. These guys, they are not on our side. They are not on our side. So we got some Joe Biden from last night, and he's not bright. And afterward, Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio had some. I've been to a bunch of these State of the Union addresses, and I've never seen anything as vile, vulgar, hostile as this, as belligerent as this. Remember, the Democrat Party got us into the first civil war in the United States of America, and now they've got this sock puppet moron out here. Boy, the Democrats are not, you just can't get along with them. As Hillary Clinton said, there is only the fight. But they did put up a fence around a 14-foot high fence, which wouldn't work along our southern border. But it works around the Capitol when the Democrats snap their fascist little fingers. They should have called out the National Guard like Kathy Hochul has in New York. You see the camouflage uniformed men in the subways in New York with their M16 rifles, their M4 rifles. It looks like a combat zone in New York City because the Democrats are so fond of crime and criminals that the Democrats had to call out the National Guard. Remember when Senator Tom Cotton of Harvard Law School and the United States Army and the United States Senate wrote an article that the New York Times published and then got rid of the guy that allowed it to be published. Tom Cotton said, hey, send in the troops when the Democrats were burning Seattle and Portland and Chicago and Minneapolis and where else, Michael? Bring out the law. I got binders full of them, honestly. And they got rid of the guy that allowed. And now they're calling out the troops. They're calling out the National Guard because Democrats are such a gang of criminals and waving Venezuelan gangs into the country and stuff. But they put this wall up around the giant fence, 14 feet high around the Capitol, just because Joe Biden was going to be there. And he was, 20 minutes late. And then by the time he got there to the podium, he was 30 minutes late. And he thinks it's all fun and gangs. It is all fun and gangs because the Venezuelan gangs, what were they so afraid of that they build a fence around the Capitol? Maybe they were concerned that 20,000 Chinese military-age men that have walked into the country were going to storm the Capitol and take it over. There would be an insurrection. What do you think? Could have been, might be worried about the Chinese gangs or maybe the Venezuelan gangs because, I am telling you, you're a Democrat Party. They're, what is it? Out of their minds. And he was out of his mind last night. He's an unwell man, not a good man. But the Democrat Party is perfectly represented by him. Very severely brain damaged, completely over the hill, antique relics from the 20th century still advancing the cause of the Soviet Union and communist China and the left. The Democrat Party is perfectly represented by Joe Biden. Honestly, intellectually broken, emotionally broken, completely over the hill. The Democrat Party, they're the left. They're not liberals. They're the left. You know that. And they want to destroy the United States of America just like the Soviet Union and the commies did in the 20th century. But now they're here, and they've got the Democrat Party and the media and education. That's an invading army would take over the same institutions. By the way, we got to stop funding National Panhandler Radio. The Republicans really need to step. Mike Johnson needs to step up on this one. Mike Johnson, I thought he was pretty good last night. I'm leaning toward giving him a lot of slack, although he had something to be condemned for yesterday, and I condemned him, that idiotic funding bill. But he was pretty good last night. His first State of the Union. And Kamala sat there. She was very excited, clapping her hand with her eyes wide open and her mouth hanging out like she was at a birthday party for children flown in from California after being given acting lessons. You can see the craters on the moon with your own eyes. The Idiocracy is here, and we are at 888-630-9625. And previous Democrat presidents on illegal border crossings, I've got that for you as well. Joe Biden barely got to the border. I think it was more than 40 minutes into his rambling, crazy old man speech that he finally got to the border. But, you know, we're going to protect Ukraine's border and Gaza's border, but not our border. Maybe we use a port here. No. That money's going to Hamas. It was really something. A lot to say about it. And there's more, too. Oregon is run by morons as well. I've got that story. They're just crazy. 888-630-9625. Hey, it's Chris Plant. Excited to tell you about our July 2024 Listener Sea Cruise. We'll be sailing around the British Isles, visiting Scotland and Ireland. Please join us. Visit ChrisPlantCruise.com. Okay, great many Democrat crazy bits to get to today. And Joe Biden's crazy old man speech last night. Angry old fart. Let's go to the telephones. Let's go to Beth calling from Woodbridge, Virginia. Beth, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hi.
Hi, Beth.
Yeah, we were watching the speech last night because there was nothing more amusing on. And, we heard him say the threat to democracy needs to be defended. And I was like, what? What did he just say? And we rewound it back to play it again. And sure enough, that's exactly what he said.
So he recognizes there's a threat to our democracy, to our republic, and he believes that that threat must be defended, like it's Hamas or something.
Right.
Here he is. We actually have that, Beth, and saw your name on the big board. Listen, here's Joe Biden last night.
The threat to democracy must be defended.
There it is, Beth. You nailed it. The threat to democracy must be defended. Why do you think he thinks the threat to democracy must be defended?
I'm sorry?
Why do you think he thinks the threat to democracy must be defended?
I have no clue. I think he's just off his rocker.
I went to the transcript from the Associated Press, and the transcript in the Associated Press is rewritten Soviet style. But we must be honest, the threat remains and democracy must be defended, the transcript says. That's what the transcript says. Because, you know, in Soviet times, which we're in now, they just rewrite the transcript to make it whatever they wanted it to be, not what it actually was. Because, Beth, the media lies to us as much as the Democrats. You know why?
No.
They're all Democrats. That's why. I got it. The transcript has been corrupted, and Joe Biden's brain, she's a broke. Now, I continued checking various transcripts here this morning, and interestingly enough, the New York Times must have used a, they've got these automatic things that transcribe voice to text, right? And they must have had the voice-to-text machine going at the New York Times, because the New York Times has the accurate Joe Biden quote where he says, "We must be honest. The threat to democracy must be defended." So the New York Times has it correct. The others, CBS News and the Associated Press and Market Watch, they all have, I'm guessing that these were the remarks as prepared, as opposed to the remarks as delivered. And the remarks as prepared actually made a certain amount of sense. You know, there's a threat to democracy and democracy must be defended. But, Joe Biden, his brain, she's a no good. She's a no good at all. In fact, we were just talking about this, and it's a lot of fun. And Joe Biden in 2020, the year 2020, he was running for the presidency, and he had a hilarious gaffe about voter fraud, about how they had built out the greatest voter fraud operation in history.
Secondly, we're in a situation where we have put together, and you guys did it for our administration, the President Obama's administration before this. We have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics.
Yeah, there are some third world countries that have greater voter fraud operations, but in the United States, and they did it for the Obama administration, and he would likely claim that he meant to say something different than that, but that is in fact what he said. And they put together, and they did it for the Obama administration, the greatest, the bestest voter fraud organization that anybody's ever seen, at least in the United States of America.
Extensive and inclusive.
And it's inclusive, which is good because they like inclusion. So, like at the FAA, where they would like to hire African lesbians who are suffering from dwarfism. That's literally in their announcement because it's inclusive for their jobs, their job posting. All right, let's get to a bit of last night's fun, because last night after the big telecast, the media was they were licking each other. If Joe Biden had been there, they'd have been giving him a tongue bath, so they had to do it remotely. Amazing stuff. But Senator Ted Cruz was on after the speech with Sean Hannity on the Fox News Channel. Said, hey, how'd you like the State of the Union address? That was a humdinger, wasn't it, Senator Ted Cruz?
Look, I think tonight was astonishing. I've never seen anything like it. It was a campaign speech, but it was an exceptionally bad campaign speech. Joe Biden was angry. He was bitter. He was screaming, as you noted, the entire night. He was radical and extreme, and he was completely out of touch with the American people. Frankly, tonight, Joe Biden reminded me like an angry old man standing on his porch screaming to the kids, "Get off my lawn." That's who he was. I've been to 12 State of the Union addresses. I've never seen anything remotely like this.
Yeah, no one has, and everyone was in full agreement. Britt Hume, who's been around this town for quite some time, well over 40 years, I would estimate, and he is shaking his head. So I'd never seen anything quite like that. And Ted Cruz was correct. Senator Marco Rubio was also asked, hey, how'd you like the big speech, Senator Marco Rubio?
The whole thing was just bizarre. You say hyper-partisan, no doubt about it. I've never seen a State of the Union ever. I don't recall any. Maybe there's been one in the past, where a sitting president mentions his predecessor or opponent and future opponent so many different times and misleads people with it. So I think the only thing he achieved tonight, there's a bunch of Democrats saying, breathing a sigh of relief that he's not Weekend at Bernie's, that he's alive and that he was able to get through his speech and that apparently he's still able to scream. But beyond that, I'm sure they're very happy about it. They're relieved, I would say. But the rest of the country saw kind of a grumpy guy saying things that are nonsensical.
Saying things that are nonsensical, a crazy old crotchety. Honestly, I was texting last night, as I said, with friends, and I say, if this guy were in your living room, you'd expect him to start throwing things and slamming things against the wall. You'd go get a garbage can lid so you had a shield in the living room. I'm holding my hand up like I've got a garbage can lid shield in my hand, and I. Honestly, I was looking at this guy, and I said, if he were like your crazy old uncle or your neighbor or something, you'd think about calling the cops. There's this crazy man in my house, and I know he's going to start throwing lamps and ashtrays against the wall and smashing glasses because this guy's out of his mind. And the news media loved it. They tongue bath. They shaved their tongues yesterday to make their tongues smoother for Joe Biden's big event. Remarkable stuff. The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, also after the big, and I got to say, he was trying to keep a straight face through most of it. There was a lot of language going back and forth in the room. And I think I said to my best girl at one point, I said, how does he keep from flipping him off? And I was one of the Republicans where I don't think there was an applause line in there for the whole nation. It was all just mean-spirited, nasty, angry, barking, spitting mad. The most partisan, the most vitriolic, the most belligerent, that is to say, literally warlike State of the Union speech, probably since the Democrats broke away to become the Confederate States of America and had to have their asses whooped by the Republicans under Abraham Lincoln, who they then shot in the head and killed, because the Democrats. But let's go to the Speaker. So, Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, sitting by there, And there's Kamala sitting next to him, who's just looking around like, like she's in the back of a convertible at the 4th of July parade in Berkeley, California or something. Where they're, clapping, and she's, people are making fun of the way she's dressed and stuff. At least she didn't match the chair in the background this year, but she had nothing to contribute. She just sits there and smiles pleasantly like a Stepford vice president. Remarkable stuff. And young, old Joe, honestly, I've got friends in Sweden, and a nice lady in Sweden sent me, we're calling him Old Yeller. He's got a new nickname in our household in Sweden outside of Stockholm. And, we call him Old Yeller. There's Old Yeller in the House chamber giving the State of the Union speech. And the Speaker of the House, this is his first State of the Union as Speaker, and he was looking around and rolling his eyes and shaking his head, and he didn't tear up the speech like that vicious beep Nancy Pelosi did. They're just a nasty, mean-spirited gang of leftists. They're not liberals at all. You can probably get along with most liberals if they're really liberals, but these people aren't liberals. And they're anti-American and they're anti-capitalist, and all his tax stuff is a lot of hooey. And his claim that he created 15 million jobs is a lie that has been debunked when he said it was 12 million. It was a lie that was debunked when he said it was 11 million. It was a lie that was debunked when he said it was 10 million. And they don't care because the truth is completely irrelevant to them. If the lie wins the day, they're happy with that. But Mike Johnson, after the Speaker of the House, after the speech, and there's another part. That Speaker, that normally the president comes down and he doesn't spend all that much time as Joe Biden did. Marjorie Taylor Greene collared Joe Biden a little bit when he was walking down the aisle, 20 minutes late. And again, having to go around the pro-terrorist Democrat mob in the street that was chanting death to the Jews. It was in a code, but they were chanting. And then he came down. Marjorie Taylor Greene gave him a button because she had buttons to give out with the name Laken Riley. And then he called her Lincoln Riley, but we'll get to that because he's got the Civil War on his mind. It's the Civil War thing again. Lincoln Riley, who actually that's the name of the football coach at USC, also Lincoln Riley. But that's not why it popped into Joe Biden's head, I don't think. In any event, when Joe Biden finally made his way down to the podium, there is a protocol, and the protocol is that you show up on time, which he didn't do, and that you spend a few minutes making your way down to the podium, but not too many minutes, maybe 2-3 minutes, because you take your time on the way out after it's over, and that's where you shake hands and get your pictures with members of Congress and some guests and stuff, at least before they're arrested. The father of one of our Marines murdered by a terrorist during the evacuation of Kabul started shouting, and we'll get to this, during the speech, and he was dragged away by the cops and arrested and charged with crimes, charged with at least one misdemeanor. But at least they didn't shoot him like Ashley Babbitt was shot and killed, because they could have accused him of trespassing and then shot him. You know how things go in Washington, D.C. these days. But the president made his way down to the podium, and he gives copies of the speech to the Speaker of the House and then to the Vice President, who is seated next to the Speaker of the House. There are great traditions. We're a great country. But the left is here, and they're burning the place to the ground. And they love Hamas and hate the Jews. It's an amazing thing. They made it for information dominance, cultural dominance. They can make Jew-hating mainstream and popular. They've done it. With young people everywhere. They've raised all these racists and anti-Semites. While claiming that they're making everybody anti-racist, they've raised the biggest generation of racists in, ages and ages, many, many generations. But never mind that. So what he's supposed to do, he hands a copy of it in a nice folder, presidential seal, and hey, here's my State of the Union speech. Don't tear it up. And gives one to the Speaker and then one to the Vice President. And then the President is supposed to pause while the Speaker of the House gavels the House, the joint session into order. And then he announces, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor and privilege to introduce to you the President of the United States. But Joe Biden turned around and just started talking like an idiot. Now, he's only been to like 120 of these. It's just amazing. I think his first one was Andrew Johnson. Was it Andrew Johnson? Pretty amazing stuff. So he botched everything. From the left forced the motorcade to divert. There were violent mobs outside the White House. You could hear them chanting and screaming when the motorcade left. Motorcade gets down toward the Capitol. More violent mobs of left-wing crazy people hating the Jews and all that. So the motorcade is diverted, and he gets to the Capitol, and he gets lost somewhere in the building. Maybe he had to go take his Prevagen. I think Prevagen should use the speech last night for their TV ads. Prevagen is that thing you take, you get it at drugstores, and it helps you with your brain and your brain activity. It's a supplemental brain health pill, Prevagen. And I think last night it was a Prevagen ad. But he might have also gotten into Hunter's stash because he was a little jacked up. Anybody spot? I didn't look real closely. Any like white residue around his nostrils or anything? Because he's jacked up. Yeah, man, I'm gonna. It's like he had a dagger in his hand. Guy was out of his mind with coke on the end, like Tony Montana. Crazy stuff. So after the State of the Union, Joe Biden just botched everything, and the protesters screwed up the motorcade route. And then 20 minutes late, then he, instead of walking to the podium and giving the speech, he thought he was at a meet and greet. And then he starts talking before he can be introduced by the speaker. And then he attacked the country and starts playing up Ukraine like he's giving the State of the Union to Ukraine instead of the United States. And because he believes in their territorial integrity, but not our territorial integrity, their sovereignty, but not our sovereignty. Their border deserves protecting, but not our border. And, of course, Hamas needs our help. Shouldn't we also be supporting Russia very directly with aid and stuff like we are Hamas? No, they love the Islamists. But, and they got to pretend they don't like Putin, even though made Putin's oil revenues skyrocket to fund Russia's side of the war against Ukraine. But never mind that. So the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, after the big event last night.
It was just an overly partisan, unnecessarily partisan evening. I mean, the State of the Union, there's always some partisan elements to it, but there's normally applause lines that everyone can join in on. I mean, that's kind of the unifying moment about this tradition, and we got none of that tonight. There was almost nothing that we could agree to because it was so full of false information, and it was hard for me to hold that in.
And you could see that he was shaking his head, he was rolling his eyes, his body language, his shoulders shrugging. It's a very straight guy, nice. They were calling him a Christian nationalist, a radical Christian nationalist about 3 weeks ago. And then Joe Scarborough called him a communist because our news media is not legitimate. And Joe Scarborough is very severely disturbed. He's a very disturbed person. And he frosts and tips his hair. He dyes his hair, goes in for that sort of thing. It was quite a night. I've got audio for you of Joe Biden and media people, too. And we've got other stuff, too. Like Oregon, where they decriminalized heroin and fentanyl, and then they're a little slow. After they buried a whole buttload of people, they figured out maybe that wasn't a great idea. And I've got a great story about the drug abuse hotline that they set up in Oregon. Everything they do turns to something that you can't say on the radio. We're at 888-630-9625. Joe Biden last night told our idiot Secretary of State and another Democrat idiot, and Pete Buttigieg was there smiling and twinkling for the cameras. And he said he was talking to the leader of the Jewish state, Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. And he told Netanyahu that they're going to have a come to Jesus. He doesn't understand a lot about different religions. Not a bright man. Let's go to the telephones, Michael. So far, we're talking about the Joe Biden, crotchety old man, State of the Union last night. Let's go to Ivan, calling from Miramar Beach, Florida. Ivan, you're on the Chris Plante Show.
Hey, Chris, my friend, how you doing this morning?
Very well, very well. What do you say?
Hey, Chris, listen, I cracked the code, by the way. You know, every time they say the word democracy, you can substitute the word Democrat. You know, in other words, a threat to democracy is a threat to Democrats. Every time they say democracy, you know, just substitute the word Democrats, and that'll tell you what they really mean. Hey, Chris, you know, I'm just angry. You know, they think we had an angry old man last night. He is nowhere near as angry as the citizens of this country. You know, I wish the Republican response had included, you know, like every chance we get in public, we need to remind us and remind them that we will never forget the 10 million illegal immigrants, you know, that you invited, the criminals, the rapists that you invited into our country, you know, the fentanyl deaths, the child trafficking, you know, the modern-day slavery that you created. We won't forget that, and we will never forget Afghanistan. We won't forget the forced vaccination you put on our kids, teaching our kids that a man can have a baby, gender mutilation, genital mutilation on our kids. We won't forget that. We won't forget the billions you gave to Iran, the racial division that you create every day that your party pushes. We won't forget the high gas prices, the energy prices that you caused by closing our pipelines and doing the opposite of energy independence. We won't forget the corruption of your family, and we will not give you 4 more years to finish the transformation of what was the greatest country in the world till you took office. We won't forget any of that. And you can't pee on us and tell us it's raining outside. It just makes me so angry that they think he was angry. The citizens of this country are more angry, way more angry for what you've done to our country and what you're going to try to do if you get 4 more years.
Yeah, and he went into January 6th again last night, which was quite minor. It was the day that Ashley Babbitt was shot and killed while unarmed after serving 12 years in the United States Air Force for the alleged crime of trespassing, and they celebrated her killing. Remarkable stuff. After hundreds of Democrat riots